awesome. So we'll just give everyone a couple more minutes to start joining in. Catherine and Zaya, introduce yourselves. Tell the group, maybe they've never seen you before, what you guys do, all that.
Yeah, go ahead, Catherine, if you want to go first.
Yeah, thank you. I am Catherine Caldwell. I'm the founder of Catch Consulting. I have a few years of experience being an SDR and also an AE. And during that time, I did a lot of video prospecting and ended up creating my own business out of it. So now I coach SDRs and AEs how to do that for a living. I'm hoping to share a little bit of the frameworks today if people are wanting that in their job seeking journey. And what I'm excited about for the holidays, I have 4 siblings, and one of them lives here in Seattle with me, and then 3 of them live kind of over towards the Midwest / the East Coast with their kids and their families. And so they're all flying in tomorrow and throughout the week. So that is what I'm super excited about. I never get to see them anymore.
Nice. My name is Zaya. I am the founder of Hot Recruiter, where I help candidates on their job search. So I help with like reverse recruiting. So I help find jobs for candidates and kind of build them up, their LinkedIn profiles, their resume, things like that. Most excited for the holiday season. I would say, my grandparents just went to LA and they come back this week. So I'm really excited for them to come back because they got me like Indian outfits to wear for Christmas. So I'm like excited about that. It's a highlight right now.
So fun.
That's awesome. Well, hi everyone. I am from Rev Genius. My name is Adriana. I super love to talk about jobs, career development, really anything regarding like early career professionals. Yeah, super excited to be here, kind of talk a little bit more. I know we have a few things to cover today. Catherine is, of course, an expert on video prospecting, so we definitely want to talk a little bit about using video to book interviews, but really the kind of theme of today's masterclass is really trying to get a job by January. I know a lot of people have been laid off in the past few weeks, so we just kind of want to talk through like how to basically supercharge, super speed your job search.
Perfect.
Oh, if you guys have any questions or anything, definitely drop them in the chat. We would love to answer them for you. But one thing that I have definitely gotten a lot of messages on that I do kind of want to touch base on is just the craziness of like trying to apply for roles around the holidays. So do you guys have any specific like tips or insight on like what that looks like kind of through the new year?
Yeah, something we talked about, if I don't remember if this was last week or the week before, but something we talked about a lot was creating your own job application kind of. So putting together dream companies. You'd want to work out, they don't even have to be dream companies. And even just reaching out to the hiring managers and asking them if they have plans of hiring or if there's going to be a need for a salesperson soon, those kind of things. That's how I found my first sales job. I reached out to the CEO and said, I feel like there is maybe a need for an SDR sometime soon. And then 3 interviews later, I was hired. So I think knowing how to prospect strategically that way, but also knowing how to ask for help. And that's something we also got into a little bit last time, but that is a really good way to find jobs is to reach out to a few people you look up to in your network, describe the kind of job you are looking for, and ask them if they know anyone that could be looking for that role, or even if they can just think of like any kind of tips or advice or anyone to introduce you to. So I think a lot of people don't really feel comfortable asking for help, and then when they do ask for help, they don't really know how to do it. So I get a lot of DMs that are like, hey Catherine, do you know anyone hiring? And it's just like, I can't help you. You have to help me help you, kind of explain what you're good at, what you're looking for, what kind of company. You could even go through my network of 12,000 people and pick the companies that you're interested in, and probably 11 times out of 10, I would say yes to introduce people to someone. So it's just kind of figuring out how to ask for help and not being too shy to do it.
Yeah, so that's what I always tell people too is first and foremost, pick what role, because I can't help you if you don't know what role you want to be in. Then from there, it's like your target companies, your target roles, like what benefits are you looking for? What are you not looking for? What would you actually enjoy doing? Things like that. because ultimately a company culture says a lot about, like you don't want to work somewhere that doesn't mesh with you personally. And then I have like the same policy, Catherine. So anybody that messages me, like probably 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say, okay, like I can do an intro. But only if, you do a little bit of legwork and you don't make me look bad if I'm introducing you and it's totally not at all what they're looking for. So, yeah.
Awesome. Zaya, have you like heard, because I know that you're more on the recruiting side of things. Have you heard anything regarding like jobs being more difficult to find right now? Just kind of like what's been going on from the holidays? Because I do think that sometimes like candidates can kind of feel disconnected to the actual numbers of what's going on. Like we know from research that, people have been generally speaking like pretty easily able to find new roles after they get laid off, and about like half of them have been able to land roles with a higher salary. So I don't like to scare candidates, but at the same time, like I do feel like the job search can be a little bit weird right now, especially with like rescinded offers, things like that. Like, what have you been seeing this month?
Yeah, so I'd say like just like holiday season in general is a little bit rough on recruiting. So from like a candidate or from like a recruiter's perspective, like hiring managers might be out of office. A lot of like exec teams and a lot of like higher up leadership have like from Christmas to New Year's off. So it's like virtually almost impossible to get offer letters and stuff out during that time. So it's kind of difficult when it comes to that. Another thing I would say is just because of the holidays in general, like candidates even aren't as quick to move as like some other people. So it's really hard if there's other candidates like in your kind of candidate group that are kind of like lacking on responding and things like that. So they might be waiting for like 1 or 2 interviews to wrap up before they make a final decision. So it's a very drawn out hiring process for December.
So, Catherine, I know that you are kind of the all-knowing LinkedIn expert, if you will, of video prospecting. So tell us about like how people can kind of leverage video, especially to, like Zaya mentioned, like get in front of people who are maybe like not totally in the office, or maybe, going through their email, their LinkedIn every once in a while, like just trying to catch those people when they can. Tell us about that.
I think for job seeking specifically, that LinkedIn is going to be the way to go, making sure you're connecting with who you believe to be the hiring manager or, just multiple people at the organization. I usually would recommend starting from the top down. So if you can connect with the CEO and then maybe the VP of sales, depending on what role you're looking for, but just kind of connect with all of them. And then from there, send them a video. And I actually think video is very successful in the holiday season because people are kicking back, relaxing with their families. They're maybe scrolling LinkedIn every once in a while, but they'll get that notification. They have a DM. Who's working so hard on December 23rd or December 24th? I think you're more likely to get attention, and that's when their inbox is also less saturated. So I think it's a really good opportunity to prospect jobs over the holidays.
So, okay, so if people aren't really in the office and they're not really booking interviews like super, super close to Christmas, or those offer letters aren't coming out, like when should people kind of stop applying, or is there a point where they should stop applying and just kind of focus on like trying to reach out to people versus actually like getting an actual like booked interview on the books? Like, thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I would say like this week, definitely get all of your interviews in. Sorry, this week, yeah, definitely getting as many interviews in as possible. Like that'll really help. And then I'd say with networking, like how Catherine said, like DMs are going to be fairly empty. So it is a good way to like network now. I did see like a lot of that like last year when I was networking. I got a lot more responses near the holidays. It does always help to like, you know, I shared a recipe. So like I found like a little Christmas cookie recipe that was like fairly easy, and I'm like, hey, this is one of my favorite recipes, like check it out. So like that was an approach I used to get in. So yeah, I'd say, like pushing these last couple applications through, because definitely first week of January, it's gonna go like super duper fast. They're gonna go and call all
Mhm.
of those applicants, and you'll be top of inbox, that sort of thing.
Awesome. So obviously, I know your thoughts on this of people like not really. We don't generally recommend that you like only apply online, but that obviously, you always do want to take those extra steps, kind of figure out like, okay, who is actually hiring for this role? Like, who is that decision maker that I can get in front of? Um, I totally forgot what question I was going to ask. Oh my God, why does this always happen to me on live streams? Oh my gosh. Okay. Scrap that. It'll come back to me. Okay. So in terms of, you mentioned that hiring does pick up in January. Like, what does
Mhm.
that typically look like? Are people, so if you're applying online, and just kind of sending in your resume, like at that point, are you kind of ahead of the curve if you're only applying online, or should you be doing other things as well?
I would say in general, like, don't only apply online. Like, that's not the most successful way to get into a role. I'd say there was a statistic on LinkedIn, but I think it was like 65% of jobs on LinkedIn were through networking instead of an
Mm,
application. So like that statistic in itself is something you need to consider. So I'd say, networking is like how all of my clients, I always like push networking. I'm like, okay, this is what we need to do, because, the underground job market really helps. So,
I
awesome.
think that's where video can come into play a lot too, right? Like you've sent a hiring manager a video, he or she's really impressed. They're not currently hiring for the role, but then when someone else in their friend group or network says, "Hey, I'm hiring for an SDR. Do you know anyone?" They go, "Oh, that person that sent me a video. That was so cool, or that was so out there." I saw a post the other day that I think it might have been. I don't remember actually who the organization was, but they're hiring for a role, and they said they only got like 4 videos, like 200
Oh,
applications
yeah.
and 4 videos, and I bet all 4 people got an interview. So it's pretty crazy how underused it is. Even though you hear people talking about it and bragging
Mhm.
about it and posting about it, it doesn't mean it's saturated yet. So it's definitely a really good approach. I just think people will remember you so much more, and then they can help you help yourself just because
mhm.
they have seen your face.
Well, and
Souls
I
and
say, like,
sense.
on top of that too, like, think about how text comes across versus how your actual like vocab and how you actually speak kind of comes across in a video too, rather than
Mm.
just, a flat piece of paper. So I feel like that's another good thing that helps with the video prospecting. And I know when I was hiring those candidates, I actually like made the effort to send a video. Those were the ones I made sure to speak to, at least give them
Yeah.
a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are watching on AirMeet, or we're still trying to figure out LinkedIn, but hopefully there's some LinkedIn people that found the link that I sent out. But if you are watching, let us know like what kinds of roles are you applying for, and are there any difficulties that you've run into, like especially in the past few weeks, kind of leading up to the holidays, that you would like some help with, because we would absolutely love to help you. Joshua sent in a question saying, "Are you sending the videos through email, where you're tracking down their email, or through LinkedIn messaging?" Or also, like, what is the best way to kind of go about that?
Here's why I like LinkedIn for job seekers over email. Job seekers technically or typically do not have access to Drift or Vidyard unless you do the free version, which good for you if you figure that out. You probably don't have like a Zoom info or an Apollo to pull emails and all that stuff. You just don't have as sophisticated of a process, but LinkedIn
Mhm.
just has all of that for you. You can sales navigator, you can search titles, you can do everything you need to do. You can see when they're viewing your profile, you can see when they're interacting with you can see what they're posting about, and then they just have your resume right in front of them. So I just think it's untapped or undertapped, versus email where you'd be kind of reaching out to someone in a silo. I do think an email touch point could be really impressive to prove your ability to multi-thread. So maybe you've applied for a job, then you sent a video, then you sent a couple follow-ups, and then you send an email and you say, "Hey, I'm hunting you down and I know how to find your email." That could be impressive looking for a sales role. But I think I would start in LinkedIn because you already have all the resources you need right within it.
So do people just record a video on their phone? Should you use VideoArt or something and then save it and then upload to LinkedIn? Like, what's the simplest way people can do this?
Yeah, I know Vidyard has a 3 months free for job seekers, so definitely utilize that. And the code is, I'll type it in the chat. So you could definitely do that. I think I'm not sure about the other ones, Drift or BombBomb or anything, if they have that feature. But on LinkedIn, I love just sending videos from my phone. So I just go into LinkedIn, I go into the DMs, hit the paperclip, hit record, and then I send a video right through there. It just mitigates all of the craziness of links and titles
Yeah.
and all of that, and then it's just your face popping up.
For sure. Okay, I saw this really great post actually on LinkedIn the other day from someone who had been applying for jobs this month and was just getting really frustrated, like just feeling really overwhelmed with everything that's been going on, especially in tech right now. And they actually had a few really good questions in their post. So I do want to kind of go over a few of these because I feel like I've definitely heard these questions before. And I've had these same questions myself. So a really good one was, am I wasting my time without a referral from a current employee? What do you guys think about referrals? Like, how can people use them? Should they use them?
So as a recruiter, referrals are the most irritating thing. So referral candidates kind of jump to the front of the line. So if there's like 200, like let's just say there's 500 applicants, but there's
Mhm.
only two referrals. The hiring managers, they're like, oh, Sally in HR and Jeff, the AE, both have two candidates for SDR. Let's talk to them first. Because it's like, okay, somebody already kind of put their name on the line for you. So like that's always helpful. And I feel like that is like one of the best ways to get an approach. And
Mhm.
I actually had a candidate in the past. Um, she went and found like three different SDRs and they all did like referrals for her, and so it just looked extra good because I was like, I found that
Yeah.
candidate, and then she went out of her way to find all of those. So, definitely, she got the role. Still, it helps.
That's awesome. So if someone doesn't really have any connections, because I know like when I was first applying for SDR roles, like I didn't know anyone in tech. I didn't really feel like I could ask for referrals because no one knew me personally. How can people start like creating those relationships?
I'd say I see a lot of people with those little coffee chat Calendlies. I'd say that that's a good one. Just say,
Mhm.
hey, like I have an interest in your company. Like, do you mind telling me a little bit more about it? And I feel like a lot of people, if you center the conversation around somebody else, they're a lot more likely to hop on a call with you than
Yeah,
saying, "Oh, what can you do to help me?" Like, it's all on your vocab.
for sure. Another great question from this post was, I'm changing industries. Do I have to take a pay cut or a step back in career level? What's the deal with that?
Sadly, I say yeah. Like, it's the sad truth. I had to do it, so I was like,
Mhm.
it's kind of crazy because like I feel like I don't know. I can speak on hospitality industry. Nobody cares about like a director of operations in hospitality, and it's like kind of annoying because it's like okay, I was the top of the food chain for like three different businesses, and now I can't get into an entry level like recruiting role. Like that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely kind of sucky, but I feel like some rules are a lot more like easier transferable than others, and I feel like hospitality isn't SaaS's friend. So
For
Yeah,
sure.
I feel like try to look at it less of a pay cut and more as a door opening to opportunity, right? Because I can't think of any other industry than tech sales where the earning potential is like exponential every year. Um, I know nurses and teachers and flight attendants and people who make hourly pay and people who make a salary in tech and then they get a raise every year and it barely matches inflation. So I would really try to think of maybe those first 2 3 years are going to be a little bit tighter, but there are lots of ways to make ends meet today too with side hustles, freelance,
Mhm.
DoorDash, literally anything. There are ways to make it work. So I would just try to look to the future of 3 years. It's going to be a payoff.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you said about just like kind of looking at it with a different perspective. Like, I personally didn't really end up taking a pay cut because my salary was about the same. But like you mentioned, it's like the increase like in earning potential and like career development and everything is really it's insane. Joshua said, I almost doubled my salary coming out of education into SaaS, but it was hard to make more money as with my salary, $47,000 a year after 18 years of teaching. Oh my God. Yeah, I totally agree with that though. Like, it's really surprising how many other like roles and industries do, in my opinion, like take advantage of people essentially because I mean, that's just not fair
Mhm.
when you have that much experience and everything. But
Yeah.
really depends on your situation. Okay, one thing that people do want to know more about is follow up. Um, how do you follow up with people? Like after maybe someone you mentioned messaging people like over Christmas break. So maybe they're like, okay, cool. Adriana, like I'll get back to you after the holidays and follow up, and we'll book some time for an interview. Maybe it's like January 5th now and you haven't heard anything from them. Like, at what point should you be following up with people? What should that follow up look like? Can you keep using video throughout the follow up process?
That's a good question. I think one video is good. I love the voice message feature though in LinkedIn. So if you wanted to do I always try to communicate with people how they want to be communicated with,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't necessarily know that at this point. So if I've sent a video and they haven't watched it or haven't responded to it, I may try something different. I'm going to write out some text, and then I just still don't get anything. I might do an audio message. I'm going to try to always change it up. But I think the best way to follow up when you're looking for a job is to show your sales and business acumen and ask direct questions. So when do you start planning to or sorry when do you plan to start interviewing for this role is my favorite question you can ask someone. You're kind of assuming the interview, but you are trying to figure out their time frame, when they're going to be buying. It's a very good like discovery call question. Just when do you plan to start interviewing for this role? And then it's really easy to reply and be like January 5th, like it's not this like crazy double-edged question that is nuanced and hard to answer. They can just kind of quickly book time with you.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I'd say too, like in general, like follow up. I say like within
Mm-hmm.
hours of your interview because you do want to stay like top of mind. And then I always tell my candidates like after your interview, like add them on LinkedIn, like if not that night, the next day. And then if they didn't respond back to your email, then I'd say like send a LinkedIn message like after like 2 days or so. And then one thing I did on my job search is I was kind of in limbo last year at
Mm-hmm.
about this time, like from my final interview until I was getting an offer because of like VP approval. Um, so yeah, that's the other bad thing about, the holiday season. Everybody's on vacation. And so, VPs and stuff like that aren't really there to do that final sign off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent like messages on New Year's because I knew Christmas was kind of like iffy saying like Merry Christmas. So
Yeah.
let me go on and New Year's and I sent like hey, like I hope you guys had a great New Year's. I can't wait to start like, just following up and doing something like a little cutesy, like
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think it's kind of funny. Like, I know obviously everyone's job search experience is a little bit different, but when I was interviewing also around this time last year, it actually ended up sort of weirdly like working in my favor that people were going on vacation because I did have a few companies just like, oh, like we'll just waive this last round of interviews. Like, it's fine. We'll get this offer letter out for you. So I do think that like a lot of times people are kind of scared to like be applying in December. Which, is totally valid. Like it is kind of hard to predict, who's going to be off and who's not, and who's going to, read your LinkedIn message or look at your resume or anything. But I think sometimes in like a weird way, it can kind of work in your favor. Um,
yeah,
but
it did because
yeah.
after all of my follow-ups, I got a call from like she wasn't like VP level, but like right below it. And
Hmm.
she called me and she was like, hey, like, I want you to know this job is yours. And as soon as I got that call, I was like, I quit my other job. I was like,
Yeah.
oh God. And so I had like a good like almost 2.5, 3 week break before my role in tech. And I was like,
Mhm.
thank God she did that because I was so tired of working like in
No,
person.
I did the same thing. I got my offer December 22nd, and I was like, thank God. Like, I am out of here. I'm never talking to you guys again.
No, yeah, I
Um,
got my verbal offer, I think about like a year ago, probably today or tomorrow. And I was like,
yeah.
I was like, deuces. It's like, I'm off until the first week of January. Like,
Oh my gosh. Okay, we have a really cool question in here from Katrina. So she asks, what advice do you have for creating video content at the mid to senior level? Is the video messaging one size fits all? So I guess this would be more so people interviewing for maybe like management positions, more of those kind of executive positions. Like, what can those videos look like?
Yeah, so the framework that I teach for all job seekers is a quick introduction, the role you've applied for, and I think it's important first to touch on the things about the organization that stand out to you before you start talking about why you would be a great fit there. And then for the closing kind of call to action, I love that. When do you plan to start interviewing for the role? So, Katrina, I think the most important thing is going to be appearing as a mid-level or an executive level applicator. Is that the word? Candidate, I guess I'll just say that. Applicator, I think, is not a proper noun. I think I would just focus on really like presenting that way with poise and humility, and then also speaking to, so the things you like about the organization are first, but then in the second portion of the video you're going to want to talk to your experience and why those things you love about the organization directly correlate with the reason they should hire you. So if you can speak to numbers or quotas or revenue attainment that you've had over your head over the past 10 or however many years, I think that is really, really helpful to make it tangible for people. That's what I would suggest. So, yeah, Katrina, maybe we can talk offline too about what organizations you're looking at, because I think it's really important to pull the reason you're interested in the organization and have it tied directly into why you would be so great at working there.
Awesome. So I saw a post also. I feel like this is just turning into like a LinkedIn live about LinkedIn posts about job searching. But there were a lot of good ones this week. So actually from Skylar Wernath, and he had mentioned two things that I do kind of want to get your guys' opinions on. So one of them was show up to the Zoom interview with a custom background with their company logo on it. Do you guys feel like that's like kind of a fun thing to do? Would you spend your time on it? Like thoughts on that? I just thought it was an interesting tip.
So yeah, one of my mutual connections, her name is oh my gosh, Ricky, and she just did a post about that like 2 weeks ago. A candidate came onto the call and had like their company logo as the background, and I think it was like kind of cute. Like it was like the guy holding like the company on like a flag or something. Like I don't know, like he went above and beyond. And she said it was kind of nice, like it broke the ice a little bit, and it was like,
Mm.
oh, like you kind of put some effort in. Me personally, I only ever had one person do it, and I was gonna like take him back for a second because I thought I joined like the wrong Zoom link, and then I was like,
Oh
wait,
my gosh.
because like I don't know, like it was just kind of weird because like that week coincidentally, like the company was like, okay, like we have all of these calls, so like put the background as your background. And so when she had it as her background, I was like, kind of do a double take. But other than that, I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's a good thing. It shows like you had that like attention to detail, and so
Mm.
like that's a good skill to have.
I love it. I've never heard of anyone doing that, but I feel like it shows so much to, I think it's important in interviews to try to sound as internal as you can, like try to already
Yeah.
know as much as you can, including people. So if you can name drop first names of, CRO or the CEO type of thing, I think that's so important. So then adding a logo as your Zoom background just shows how much you've already adopted the organization and the product into your mindset, and how much you accept it as like a ritual in your life, right? How much
Mm.
you want that to be your new standard. So I actually really like that idea. I think it's cool. I don't think a
Yeah.
lot of people are doing that if I've never heard of it.
No, I
Yeah,
totally agree. I hadn't really heard of anyone doing that either, and I do think it's a really cool idea. The only thing that would scare me is that I feel like I would maybe forget to change it, like in between interviews, and then I would like get off with someone else's background on it. And like, can you imagine?
that would
Um,
be me.
yeah,
That would literally be me. Or it's like,
I just
oh,
know I would do that.
it's like, oh yeah, this is my interview with Microsoft, and then you put it on, and it's like you
It's
hop
like
on, and it's like
Google.
Facebook or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that'd
Oh
be
my
so bad.
gosh.
Oh my gosh, new fear unlocked.
Yeah. For sure. Okay, so in terms of like standing out during the interview process, so I know there is a lot of talk just about that in general, like from like 30, 60, 90 plans, taking good notes like before your interview process, doing a lot of research. Like, is there any one thing that you just really, really feel like, okay, people should absolutely be doing this? And if they're not doing this on their job search, then they're missing out?
Hmm. I'd say like personalization in general. Just because I feel like so one of the biggest things that I did in my interview process was I made sure that I had like actual facts about the interviewer like
Mhm.
written down. So then that way I can point out commonalities between them like on our calls. Because at that point like you can kind of narrate where the calls go. So I feel like personalization in general is something that a lot of people don't do, but they should.
Catherine, is there anything specific that you want to mention that's maybe like beyond video? I know you also work with a lot of salespeople, so I'm sure you hear a lot about their job searches and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's all encompassing. Like, just don't just apply, reach out to the hiring manager, follow up. I think
Yeah.
the most important thing you can do in your search for a sales job is to be a salesperson. I think you have to showcase that. And maybe it's helpful if I tell the story of my first SDR job, and maybe it'll make people feel better. I did not know what an SDR was when I was applying for SDR jobs. I didn't really even know like what sales was or anything. Like, I didn't understand what LinkedIn was used for. I thought I was like looking for jobs on there, but it actually really confused me. And I just had one person in my network that referred me to the CEO of my past company and was like,
Mm.
I don't know. There's no job posting up, but I kind of feel like this guy's going to hire an SDR soon. I don't even know how she knew that, but just having one person in my corner changed my whole life. So like
Yeah.
having someone like one of us just ask, and they you just might know someone. So I reached out to the CEO. It was an in mail, and the subject was I'm your next SDR, I think. And I just typed out, I heard from a bird you might be hiring, and it's me. I'm your first application, whatever. And then I did 3 interviews with them, and in
Mm.
the third interview, it was with the CEO, and he posts on LinkedIn all the time. And I purposely was kind of referencing his posts in the interview, and then when they called me and gave me the job offer, they said it was because I followed up so many damn times. They were
Yeah.
like, we actually we were interviewing another guy, and he has like 3 years of experience in sales, but we could tell that he didn't really like care that much about getting the job. Like, he had
Mm.
experience and knew he could probably get a job somewhere else, and he didn't send us a thank you email. He didn't follow up with us. He didn't show us like the hunger, and that's pretty much all I did throughout. Thank you after every single interview. I was asking questions if I didn't hear from them when they promised me I would hear from them. And I think in the interviews, it was notable. I always set up the next steps. So I took
Mhm.
like a discovery call. And I don't even know how I knew how to do that. I think I was just so desperate for a job that I was like, when are you going to talk to me next? And then if they didn't, if they didn't talk to me when they said, I would
Please
email
let me
them.
know.
I'd be like, you told me we were going to talk today. Like, what's going on? I really want this job.
Yeah.
So literally just that, just like showing that I wanted it and showing I had the skills to follow up, and I was
Mm.
like fully in the process, got me the job, because they mentioned it multiple times throughout the year I was there of like,
Yeah.
we almost hired that other guy and you just followed up and now you're a good saleswoman and we're so glad. But it's just interesting how just going a little extra
Mhm.
can change. It can be between you and someone with 3 years of experience, and going a
Yeah.
little bit extra can change your whole life.
Hmm.
Absolutely. I do love that you mentioned that. I know for me, like a really big thing with any role that I've applied for is always like creating an action plan. And I feel like that's something super easy. Like you mentioned, it's like, what can I do to actually stand out, like beyond these people who do have a lot more experience, like who do have a lot more industry knowledge than I do. And for me, that's always been like one of the easiest ways, especially because like you can, if you're applying to a certain role, you can always create like a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and then it's very easy to adjust it like based on the company and everything. And you can always bring it up and like like second and third round interviews, which I feel like is where a lot of people get stuck on, like, okay, like I'm booking interviews at this point, I'm sending videos to hiring managers, and then I'm like getting to these second, third, sometimes even fourth rounds, and then someone else is getting picked over me. So that's definitely one of my like favorite tips. But we have two more questions in the chat, so let's get to these. Okay, Chris asked, what is the balance between assertive or hungry follow-ups versus projecting desperation? I'll let you answer this, Catherine, because I think we need to hear that.
Yeah, I think it's the same as the sales process. So a lot of people will tell you like saying just following up or
Mm.
any of those like, hey, just bumping this up. When are you going to interview me?
Bubbling this up
Doesn't
in your inbox. Did you
Yeah,
miss
that
this?
would be more of the desperation slash lazy in my opinion. But maybe, and I can't think of something. This is off the cuff. I'm just thinking like, if the hiring manager was Adriana, I'd probably say, Adriana, I enjoyed our call so much. I just really love how Rev Genius, whatever I love about Rev Genius, how they just bring so many communities combined. And I would hate to miss the opportunity to work with you.
Mhm.
And then maybe add something about myself of, I've been getting into all the Rev Genius channels,
Mm.
and I've been doing my research. I've been talking with XYZ as well. Would you be open to having another conversation? Something like that. So I'm going to provide, I guess not value, but I'm going to show that I'm trying my best to add
Yeah.
value or be able to add value when I do get hired into the role. And then I'm asking that direct question of, would you be open to talking to me one more time or giving me another chance, or when's your next availability, so I can showcase what I've learned from scrolling through the channels and meeting new people. So yeah, I think that would make a huge difference from just like, hey, Adriana, like bumping this up, remember me? Let's talk again. And she's like, for what? Like, what's
Mhm.
changed since the last time?
For
Yeah, so
sure.
definitely I'd say like bringing up specifics from your interview too. Like if you guys did
Mm.
connect on like some sort of personal level or anything like that, so like values, something like that, I would always bring that up. Like this, like I always say, like, oh, this part of the interview really touched me in XYZ, like whatever. Just so then that way they know, like, oh wow, like he thinks it's a mutual fit type of thing.
So, if someone hasn't heard from a hiring manager or a recruiter and they've sent maybe, let's say, like two follow-up messages over like a week, something like that, like at what point should people stop following up, if ever?
That's a tricky question. I'd say just be annoying, like from a recruiter perspective. Just because like there's so many things that fall through the cracks, like as a recruiter, because it's like
Mm.
I could have 10 tabs open, six of them are LinkedIn. I'm responding back to you, and then my dog needed to go outside, and then I opened up a new tab and I did something else. So it's like always not super intentional. There's like a lot of margin for error, like when it comes to
Mm.
recruiting. So I'd say just be annoying, top of inbox, top of mind, until you get a no, then I just say keep going.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think for any kind of initiative to actually happen and take off, one person has to take on more investment than the other. So that
Yeah.
happens with me all the time. Like someone will email me to be an affiliate partner, or they'll email me to demo their product, and I totally want to and I'm interested, but it is not my priority. And so they need to hound me. They need to put the meeting on my calendar. They need to remind me to write the blog post, whatever,
Yeah.
because I'm running my own thing. And if you're asking me for a favor or something of that sort, and it's a little bit different for interviews, but I need you to actually remind me. And so in a lot of cases, the hiring managers probably aren't actually ignoring you. They just need to see that this is your priority, because they have other things going on. Of course, you do too, but if your priority truly is this job, then you will prove it. So it's not so much of like, I want to ignore you, or I want to forget that you reached out. It's like, I need you to kind of prove that this is your top initiative. And then once I've seen that, it's going to become more of a priority for me naturally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always say too, it's always more of a like it's always more important to the candidate to get the job than it is for the hiring manager to get the seat filled.
Yeah.
Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, the hiring manager can pick any candidate, but the candidate can't pick every role. So
Right.
For sure. Okay, so we have another question from Manel. I'm sorry if I'm not saying that right, but it was how to break into tech sales. Do you recommend boot camps? This is definitely a topic of many, many, many live streams and webinars because there is just so much to cover. But how do you guys feel about boot camps? Like, talk to us about that. I definitely have thoughts on this.
Okay, my thoughts, free boot camps are always a
Mhm.
yes. When it comes to taking out a loan for a boot camp that doesn't get you a job, that's a no for me. Personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable with other boot camps that make me sign on for, like, let's say, like, I can't find my own role for 60, 90 days. That's something I wouldn't do either. But that's just my personal opinion. Like, I don't want to wait 60, 90 days for a chance. So,
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Definitely only free boot camps. I honestly don't even really think boot camps are necessary. I did not do a boot camp, nor did I really want to. And that's really because like there are so many free resources and everything. Like there's so many people on YouTube that talk about like how to break into tech. There's so many people, you know, like Catherine that talk about like video prospecting and how to leverage that, like especially when you are a new candidate that doesn't have experience. And with all of that out there, it's like I feel like it's maybe a better use, generally speaking, of your time as an applicant, like to just put in that time to doing your own research, like using the methods that work for you versus, you know, enrolling for like 4 to 8 weeks. Because I think that you can learn like most of the basics in like a week or two, you know, if you really just put the time into like researching and everything. But
mhm.
yeah, no ISAs, don't pay for anything. Because it's really it sucks that like certain like companies and stuff do take advantage of people who are trying to get into this industry, but they do, and I think it's better to just avoid them completely.
I'd say
um
it would be worth the money if they were guaranteed a job, but
yeah,
if they're not, then it's not worth it. So,
I think the thing for me is that like there are some boot camps that will basically tell you like we will absolutely get you a job like or you don't pay us. But I've also heard from a lot of candidates that it's like they'll try to do like sneaky things and like, you know, try to get them to pay anyway, even if they don't have a role, or they'll have to wait like 4 months. They can't, you know, like you mentioned, apply to other companies and stuff that are like outside of their partner program, things like that. And it's like, I feel like as a candidate, that's probably not the best situation like anyone really wants to be in. But Joshua
Completely.
said,
Yeah.
sorry, Catherine, I
No,
didn't
no.
mean to cut you
Everything
off.
you guys said, but something that came to mind too about boot camps or just getting into tech sales is, yeah, a free boot camp. That's great. Why not also like get into some free courses or master classes for
Yeah.
people that are already in sales and already have that business acumen? Like how much you could learn from that, and then also meet those people that are already in the seat. I think could be a really cool networking opportunity. So
Yeah,
why not do
absolutely.
both?
I've
Yeah.
helped
Yeah.
people from, like, bartending to, like, just regular jobs like cashier get into tech sales, so it's like, I really personally don't think you need a boot camp
Yeah, for
because,
sure.
even a cashier signing people up for, like, memberships, I help, calculate metrics for that because, like, that is sales, like, getting somebody to sign
Mhm.
up right then and there with their email, their phone number, whatever, like, that's, booking somebody for a meeting potentially, so there's you got to translate your um, relevant skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Joshua in the chat had mentioned boot camps like Aspireship are good because they're free and it gives you a glimpse into seeing if you'd enjoy sales, which I also think like does go back to the, you know, if you're meeting with people who are currently SDRs or in whatever position that you want to be in, like I think that that gives you like a much better understanding of what the role is really going to be like versus just going through a boot camp because it's like you can really talk to the people who are
Mhm.
in that role and still doing it every day. A lot of the boot camp instructors, things like that, are like, for the most part, a lot of the time, like people who've already been out of that role for a while are doing something else now. And it's not that they don't have like valuable information to share, but it's a little bit different, like talking to someone who's really doing it every single day.
I'd say to find somebody with a similar job history to yours,
Hmm.
because if you can find somebody that has gone from like bartending to tech sales, then they're able to say, okay, well, this is
Yeah.
like this is very, very different from like whatever, whatever. And so I actually did that. I was able to find like restaurant managers that got into like recruiting. And it was so much more beneficial to hear like, okay, like it's gonna be nice for you. You get to get rid of everything else. So
Yeah.
the flip side, like if you're transitioning careers to SDR, like personally, if somebody told me about an SDR role, I'd be like, no, not for me. Like, you know.
For sure. Okay, so last post that I'm going to mention today. So, Mindy Johnson on LinkedIn made a post about how she was laid off and was able to get an offer for her dream job in a week. So, I do kind of want to go over this, especially because it's like people who have been laid off, like they are very unexpectedly like out of a job. Usually their income, health insurance, like it's usually an emergency situation as to like trying to find another role. So, I want to talk a little bit about like what steps people can take like this week to maybe, obviously we can't guarantee that you'll get your dream job in a week, but if someone was just laid off, let's say like on Friday, like what can they be doing every single day this week to kind of try to put themselves ahead of the curb? Um, Figured we could maybe go through this like step by step.
Mhm. So I'd say for what I recommend, if you're laid off, those layoff posts kind of get a lot of traction. So make sure you're putting like, especially that first one. So making
Mhm.
sure you're kind of being strategic with that. So like, yeah, you're laid off. Like, talk about whatever issues you may be having personally, and then on top of that, what you're looking for from a future company in general. Just because then it's gonna have more of a like more of a reach. So instead of being one of the many, oh, I got laid off, this is like, okay, well, I got laid off. I'm sad about it. And this is what I'm looking for all in one. So then that way more people can be like willing to help. I'd say even potentially like if you are very specific and you know what role you want, then like attaching a resume for that role could be very beneficial as
Mm.
well.
Can people also like tag the companies that they want to work for, people that they would want to work for, or should they be like messaging those people privately? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
I'd say so you need to think about it this way too. If you tag a company on LinkedIn and they don't respond, then LinkedIn's not going to push your post. So I
Mm,
wouldn't say tagging those posts. I'd say going more strategically. And then on top of that, do you want these companies to know, hey, I want to work for you and your other 10 competitors?
yeah.
That's the other thing.
That's totally fair. Um, yeah, definitely a good point. Okay, so in terms of so let's say like someone has made their post about getting laid off. They've talked about like what kind of company they want to work for and everything. And let's say the post went really well. They booked a bunch of interviews. Like, how can they very quickly like research these companies, the people that they're interviewing with, and just like very quickly get all of that information together?
Mm. I say go in kind of order of importance, but also order of your interviews. So like if you have an interview next week, like a couple of them, like worry about the ones tomorrow first, like do the research for those ones. And then what I did is I had like a spiral notebook. I just bought a new one literally just for job seeking. And each one I did like a page for whatever interview was next. And I kind
Mm,
of had like a chronological order. And I was just writing whatever I could. People from that company that I talked to, I had like the company values written down, like when they got their funding, things like that. So then that way I could actually speak on them. And then I like propped up my notebook, like right lined up with my camera on my laptop. So then that way I could kind of read off whatever I needed to.
mm. Yeah, I love that you mentioned company values as well, because I think that that's like one of the easiest ways to stand out. It's so simple. Like the company values are usually on a career page, something like that. But if you can like take those exact words and work them into your answers while you're interviewing, that I believe like puts you ahead of the curve from a lot of candidates, even if other people look better on paper than you.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so let's say now at this point, let's call it, it's like Wednesday. Okay, like you were laid off on Friday, you made your post on Monday, it's Wednesday, you're interviewing. What can people do like in between interviews? Should they be like reaching out to other people at the company, kind of like meeting with them? What does that look like if you're just kind of like waiting for the next round?
So Sorry, Catherine. Do you want to answer this one?
No, I mean she already did. It's exactly what I would do is just reach out to people at the
Mm,
organization, talk to them. That's definitely a huge part of how I got my second job as an account executive was I kind of already knew everyone on the team and they all liked me and put in a good word. So I would definitely do that. And you might find out something that you didn't want to know and now you don't want to interview anymore.
That's true. That's true. I would say though, personally, like what I tell my candidates is okay, like let's say you did get 10 interviews.
mm,
Do you want those 10 interviews or do you want to like take your chance and try and get some more? So I say that first week of interviews is really your good push to try and get more
yeah.
that following week. So then that way, like over the next 3 weeks to a month, then you'll be able to have a couple offers, hopefully, and kind of balance your options. So I say like keep pushing.
Awesome. And for anyone that's kind of, like we mentioned, like already in that interview process, what can they do? Is there anything that they can do to kind of like speed that along? Like, what should people say? Let's say they are laid off and they do need a job right away, but obviously there's not like a specific day that they would be ending with their current company, anything like that. Like, what should they be telling their interviewers when they're expecting like to hear about start dates, anything
I'd
like
be
that, like
honest
how
with
to
your
handle this.
recruiter. So your
Mhm.
recruiter, first and foremost, is going to pick your start date, which kind of sucks. For SDR roles, it's also really tricky because you have a monthly cohort that you have to be a part of. So like that's the part that's irritating. So all salespeople have to kind of be in that same group. Um, so just kind of like communicating with your recruiter because they're going to be the one that's going to be able to say, hey, can we push them to
Mm,
like this one in 2 weeks rather than the one a month out type of thing.
for sure. And is there anything specific people can do to kind of like close their interview? Let's say they're on like last rounds. Like, what are some things that they can do if it's between them and another candidate, to kind of stand out in that last round of interviews and really just kind of close the deal while they're on Zoom?
I think it's asking those direct questions. When are we closing this deal? In so
Yeah.
many words, like who do I need to talk to next? Assume you're going to talk to the next person. Can we put that on
Mm,
the calendar right now? I have my calendar pulled up. Those kind of things. So I would try to avoid getting off of an interview like, hey, thanks so much, whatever. I guess I'll like look for an email from you. Like try to avoid that as much as possible and know what email is going to be sent and when, and then what steps. How many of those steps can you make it to become your own? Yeah, because you want to have the recruiter or the hiring manager or whatever have the least amount of work to do to prove that you are showing initiative. And I think it's just all about those closing questions. What's next? When, let's schedule it now, all
mm.
those kind of things. What happens after that? Completely understanding the process is very important.
Yeah, I had the candidate once tell me like, "Oh, like when's the email coming out so I can set a reminder on my phone?" And I was like, I was I was like, actually, I don't know. So it's a good way to
Yeah.
get some more information out of recruiters because sometimes recruiters have to like we don't have all the answers. So
Yeah.
putting us on the spot helps because if you make us uncomfortable, like we're really gonna go and message the hiring manager right away. So it's kind of the best way for you to get some feedback sooner than later.
For sure. Okay, so there is one more question in the chat, which we did slightly touch on already, but we can just kind of go over this again. But we only have a few more minutes, so if you are watching and you do want your job search question answered, now is your last chance. So pop them in the chat if there's anything that you want to know. Oops. Okay, I meant to share this one. How do I get job interviews? I was applying for jobs, but I only get one interview out of 100 applications. So I know that we did kind of touch on like staying away so much from applying online, but if someone's kind of already doing that, like should they be following up on the applications that they've already sent out? Should they just scrap that entirely? Talk to me about like that process.
Yeah, first I would rewind this live and rewatch it. The second thing I would do is out of those 100 applications you're doing, I would pick like probably my favorite 10 and attack them. So my favorite 10, I'm gonna add everyone on LinkedIn that I possibly can. I'm gonna reach out to everyone from SDR to CEO. Like SDRs, I'm gonna ask them their experience. Account executives, I'll ask them, what was your experience getting from SDR to AE or whatever it was. And then I'm going to send a video to the C level. probably send a video to the VP of sales where I reference the C-level, hey, I already reached out to Sherry or whatever, and trying to sound as internal as possible, and then follow up on it. So 100 applications is a lot. But if that's all that you do, that seems like a pretty normal ratio to me. Is 100 applications, you get one interview. Hopefully you can get more to like 10% by doing the extra steps.
Absolutely. Any thoughts on this, Aya?
I would say just networking in general is a lot more important. Like I feel like we've kind of got that through this call. Networking is way more important than applications because you're just 1 in a million. Rather than networking, you're probably 1 in 10, and then from there, like actually having conversations kind of puts you into that top 1%.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. If you want video prospecting advice, Catherine, where can people find you?
LinkedIn. I'm on there 24 hours a day. Seriously.
Saya is an awesome recruiter for all kinds of tech roles. So if you are looking for a role, he's definitely a great person to contact. I know you're on LinkedIn all the time as well, but do you have a website?
Website is under construction. New things coming.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
Awesome. So LinkedIn is the best way for people to reach you.
Yes, LinkedIn is.
Perfect. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Catherine, for dropping your website.
Yep.
Awesome. And I'm Adriana, obviously. I'm with Rev Genius. So we are a community of 30,000 sales, marketing, success, and revenue professionals. It's totally free. If you would like to join, you can send me a DM on LinkedIn also, because I too am there 24/7. But if you are watching today, thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions, please reach out to any of us, and we will see you guys next time.
Yay.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Yeah.